This is the story of how a woman came back from the dead to solve her own murder in the only known court case in history that included testimony from a ghost. In 1896, in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, a woman named Zona Heister met a blacksmith named Erasmus Stribling Trout Shoe, who she quickly fell in love with. In their whirlwind romance, they decided to elope that same year. Only 3 months later, Zona was found dead in her home. On the morning of her death in January of 1897, Mr. Shoe left his blacksmith shop and went to a nearby house to ask the neighbor boy to go check on Zona. When the boy arrived at the house, he found Zona's corpse on the floor. A doctor was quickly called to try to resuscitate her, but when he wasn't able to bring her back, her husband asked that he perform no further examinations. In a fit of hysterics, Mr. Shoe began preparing Zona for her burial, dressing her in the same high-necked burgundy dress she'd worn at their wedding, along with thick layers of veils to cover her face and neck. Mr. Shoe claimed she died of a heart attack, but the official cause of her death was listed as childbirth. However, she'd never told anyone that she was pregnant. Not long after the burial of her daughter, Mary Heister was visited by the restless ghost of Zona. She appeared before her mother and told her about how she'd really died. Mary had stated, "It was no dream. She came back and told me that he was mad that she didn't have any meat cooked for supper. But the second night, she told me that her neck was squeezed off at the first joint." On the third night that Zona visited, she even turned her head completely around to prove to her mother what her husband had done to her. Mary demanded the exhumation of her daughter's body, and after the prosecutor had heard about Mr. Shoe's strange behavior with the doctor, he agreed. Upon examination, the doctor reported that, quote, "The discovery was made that the neck was broken and the windpipe mashed. On the throat were the marks of fingers indicating that she had been choked. The neck was dislocated between the first and second vertebrae. The ligaments were torn and ruptured. The windpipe had been crushed at a point in front of the neck." Shoe was quickly arrested. During the murder trial, it was revealed that Shoe had had 2 wives prior to Zona. The first wife had filed for divorce, claiming that he was abusive to her. The second wife had died less than a year after they had married, after Shoe claimed he accidentally dropped a brick on her head. He was found guilty of the murder of Zona Heister Shoe on July 11, 1897. Edward Erasmus Shoe lived out the rest of his days in the West Virginia State Penitentiary, a location which may require its own video at some point. He died on March 13, 1900 of an unknown illness. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. A historical marker was erected in honor of Zona Shoe near the cemetery where she was laid to rest, stating, "Interred in nearby cemetery is Zona Heister Shoe. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until her spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband, Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's account." Edward, found guilty of murder, was sentenced to the state prison, only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer.